In this week's video, I'm going to share with you one of my favorite campsites. It's on Salt Spring Island. I'm going to share a recap from my latest camping trip there. I'm going to share some of the photos and video from that trip. In addition to that, at the very end of this video, I'm going to share the pros and cons of camping on Salt Spring to see if it's going to be the right spot for you. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. If this is our first time meeting, my name is Ezra. I'm a couples and portrait photographer currently based in Vancouver, British Columbia. Now in today's video, I'm very excited to share with you one of my favorite camping spots. It's on Salt Spring Island. It's actually accessible from Victoria, Vancouver, and also Vancouver Island, which is where I was coming from. I met up with my friends Josh and Olivia after they got off work. We piled into Josh's truck and drove on the highway all the way to Duncan. And once we were in Duncan, we actually picked up some Tim Hortons before we made our way to Crofton, which is where the ferry was that was going to take us to Salt Spring Island. The ferry is only about 20 minutes, and once we got onto the island, since we had to wait until Josh and Olivia were off work, it was actually pretty late, about 8:30 I believe at that time. We made our way across the island all the way to Ruckle Provincial Park, which is where we were going to be camping. A couple days prior, I had reserved a campsite for us, but the first come first served sites are actually the more ideal sites, at least for what we were looking for. It's right on the cliff that overlooks the ocean. It's absolutely breathtaking, and they are first come first served. So the site we decided to choose was site number 26. We pitched up our tents and it was getting dark at that point. We were able to quickly move all our things in, and the site itself is pretty accessible. A lot of sedans were also parked in the campground as well, so you don't need an off-road vehicle to get there. And although we couldn't find them, apparently there are some wheelbarrows where you can throw your stuff in, like your bags and tent, and wheel them down the trail all the way to the campsite. There are outhouses there as well, and there is tap water accessible as well. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to have any fires. There's no fires on your campsite, but there are 3 communal fires close to our area, so we had to use them instead. And luckily we had brought wood as well, so we were able to cook our food there. Anyway, so we're at the campsite. It's pretty late. It's about 9:30 by that point, and we're ready to eat and we were hungry. And that night we had planned for steaks for dinner, so we took out Josh's cast iron pan, went over to one of the communal sites, made friends with the people there, and then made our steak there. And then after that, we brought our steak back to our campsite and then had that with some macaroni salad before turning in for the night. Okay, so now the next morning we wake up. I didn't really check my time exactly on my clock to see what time it was, but it was actually pretty early, and when I discovered what time it was still before 6 o'clock in the morning. We must have got woken up by the sun and the birds, and it was absolutely breathtaking. As you can see in some of these videos I was able to get, these are absolutely incredible views in the morning here, and this is our tent here as well. After a quick and early breakfast, since we had all gotten up super early, we had oatmeal and then bagels as well, along with boiled eggs. And I didn't really have anything to toast the bagels. I just had an MSR stove, so I just dumped everything out of the MSR stove, turned it on low, and put the bagels in the bottom of my pot, and luckily it toasted it pretty well. We were able to put some cream cheese and jam on that, and we were able to eat that as well. One of the campsites right next to us, there was a gentleman there, and we had lots of eggs, so I asked him, hey, do you want some boiled eggs, as we were talking that morning, and he said sure, and so we boiled some eggs for him as well. Now after breakfast, it was still super early, and we decided to go explore a little bit. I brought a bunch of hammocks, and so we set up 3 hammocks on this cliffside, and we all brought our books and just really rested out in the sun. It was nice and warm, and it was still early morning, so we were just hanging out in hammocks and we were reading, but then most of us pretty quickly fell asleep as well. After a couple hours of just completely relaxing, which was absolutely incredible, we went into town, and there was the Saturday market which we went to, and it was really cool as well. It was only one-way traffic due to COVID, obviously, and we had to wear masks, but it was really cool to see all the different vendors there. And I actually purchased a ring from one of the vendors, and it was this ring here you can see on my thumb. They didn't have any other sizes, but I really liked the ring, and so I got it even though it only fit my thumb. It's actually a ring that was made in Bali as well, and so that's one of the places I've traveled to recently, and so I was really excited to get something that was local from there as well. After exploring the markets a little bit, we went back to our campsite, and then we had lunch there, which was some salads that we had made before coming, and then we decided to just enjoy a little bit of the sun before we went to try and find the boulders to climb that afternoon. Now trying to find the boulders were pretty hard. I had some general directions, but the book for Salt Spring was no longer being printed, and I couldn't find it in any of the local bookstores there either. And so luckily I met someone over Facebook on one of the Facebook climbing groups, and they kind of gave me a screenshot of the directions and sort of area to go check out. So we were eventually able to find it, and the rock there is very different. I think it's called collimate or something like that. Basically it's just really compressed rock, and it almost looks like crappy concrete, like there's lots of rocks and almost like sand. And anyways, it's very rough looking rock, and we weren't able to find any really big problems, but we were able to find a couple of rocks that we decided to make a problem out of, and we just set up our mats, hung out there, and tried to project the boulders there for a couple hours, and were able to successfully complete a couple there as well, which was really fun. Now after bouldering for a couple hours, we got pretty tired and was ready to go back to our campsite, so we drove back to the campsite, And then from there we made our supper, which for this evening I had planned nachos, kind of like a one dish, one pan sort of idea. So everything was cut up already. I went over to the communal fire we were at and we just put the meat on the fire, cooked the meat, threw the cheese on, and then we brought it back to our table, threw the sort of Tupperware of vegetables and like avocado, peppers, onions, cucumbers, tomatoes, all of that on top of the mixture, and then added sour cream as well. And then we had our nachos. We just had plates and chips, and we all took that out of the big cast iron plate. And so it was really delicious, and it was one of our last meals there, and so I was very excited about that and that we were able to enjoy that. Anyways, that evening after supper was taken care of, we all piled into my tent, and sort of a side note as well actually, my bouldering pad, which is a Mad Rock bouldering pad, a trifold, so it's really big, fits perfectly in my tent, and so I just used that for the whole duration of camping, but had that in the bottom of my tent. My friends all piled into my tent as well, and we played cards for a little bit before we decided to pack it in and go to sleep since we were pretty tired having been up so early in the morning. Now that evening before we went to sleep, I decided to take out my camera and get some really cool long exposure photos as well. It was absolutely incredible. I'm really excited to show you these photos too. Now in the morning after we woke up, we had a quick breakfast as well, and we had leftover steak from our first night, so we had ramen and steak for breakfast along with the remaining bagels. And then we packed up our tents and everything, and it was great timing as well because as soon as we finished packing everything up, it started to rain. Now with everything packed into the back of Josh's truck, we went back to the ferry and then drove all the way home, and that was the end of this trip. Alright, so like I said at the beginning of this video, I want to share some of the pros and cons for camping at Ruckle Provincial Park on Salt Spring Island so you can make a decision if it's right for you. Starting with the pros, it's very accessible and it's absolutely gorgeous as well. I love that there's a lot of first come first serve sites, so you don't have to reserve in far in advance. You can just show up, and if there's a site, you can take the site. I also like that you're able to just wheel your camping equipment and everything in with you on a wheelbarrow. Like I said, we couldn't find the wheelbarrows. There are apparently certain spots where you can find them, but that's super accessible. The trail isn't very long. We hiked everything in, and it was only about a 7-minute hike in. Along with that, the outhouses are immaculate as well, and I love that you have tap water on demand at different locations as well. Unfortunately, one of the cons for me is you're not able to have your own campfires, but it sort of makes sense when you're there. There's a lot of long grass where you're camping, so that's kind of unfortunate. So if you're looking to have your own campfire, you can't do that unless you have a group site, although there are a number of communal sites that you can use. One of the things I was told by one of the people there as well is if you go far along the edge of the cliff and just keep going towards the right away from the main parking lot, those sites apparently are further apart from each other, so it's a bit more private. We didn't go there when we camped there for the first time, and so unfortunately a lot of the sites were a bit closer, and the noise at night was definitely something that kept us up for a little bit. So bring earplugs, or maybe try and find one of the sites down the cliffs a little bit more. One of the pros again is that all the campsites have their own picnic table, so that's really nice as well. Another pro for camping at Ruckle Provincial Park is it's very accessible. Like I said, you can get to it from Victoria, Vancouver, or Vancouver Island, so it's great for that as well. And the market is really awesome too, which we were able to check out. A lot of artisans there, and you can find a lot of baking there as well. So it's mostly, in my mind, pros for camping there. It's very accessible, so I guess that could be a con as well if you're looking for something a bit more private. It's probably not going to be the best location for you. It's great for group sites, or if you're sort of into glamping and bringing a lot of comfort with you, that's going to be perfect for you. But if you're wanting to find somewhere you can overnight and be really secluded, it's probably not the best for you for that sense. If you have any more questions about trying to find this provincial park, or any questions about my experience there, you can send me a message actually on Instagram at Ezra's High Photography as well, if the question that you were hoping wasn't answered in this video. But that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any further questions, you can leave a comment, or you can send me a message on Instagram. If you're not already following me, follow me on Instagram at Ezra's High Photography. You can keep up with me on a daily basis. Until next time, guys, make new friends and shoot them. Bye-bye.